Did you know that you can do this? Why some chests can be a trap? Or that this random vendor in the middle of nowhere sells something which makes an endgame dungeon much easier? Vanilla WoW is full of strange and often unobvious interactions, and whether you've been playing this game from launch in 2004 or from Classic in 2019, you'll find that throughout playing hardcore, when you really start paying attention, some things don't quite work the way that you thought they did. Either that or you end up learning some things which are completely new. There is always tons to talk about with Vanilla WoW, so I'm back today with 10 more tips for your hardcore journey. First up is the fact that Blizzard have put vendors everywhere in the world, and some of them have very good and unique items on them. The real trick here is knowing where to look. Now, the list of unique items on vendors would be way too big to go over here, so I've been seeing what options there are add-on wise to check out and help you with. And I found through using Handy Notes with Handy Notes NPCs with these options selected, that vendors throughout the world will appear on your minimap alongside a full list of items which they sell. Now, there is the small issue of not being able to hover over the list to, see what stats they have, but often you can make an educated guess based upon the item name as well as the icon. Either that or some good old-fashioned Googling. I mean, it's Classic after all, the game gives you plenty of time between running to different areas. Or you could use this add-on as, I'm in the area, I can see there's a vendor here, let's go check out what they have. You do tend to get very well itemized greens with some combination of your main stat and stamina. The vendor I mentioned at the start is Brokin. He's a goblin in the ruins of Alterac that sells the recipe for alchemists to craft frost oil. Not only is this used in the quest line to unlock the nifty stopwatch, but it's also needed for Diamore North tribute runs in order to trap one of the bosses, meaning you don't have to run the risk of trying to sneak around him, which on a one life character towards the end game is an option you're always going to want. On top of vendors being everywhere, there are also class trainers all over the place as well. With these same settings on Handy Notes, they should also appear on the map for you. Did you know there's a warrior trainer in Theramore, a rogue trainer in Booty Bay, or multiple hunter trainers in Ashenvale? Well, some of them are faction specific, and they can't reset talents like the trainers in big cities can. But hey, if you just got a level and you want to learn some new spell ranks, there might be a trainer a bit nearer than you think. Next is a tip that can be used right from your starter zone to the end game, and that is abusing mob pathing to kite them. Throughout the world, there will be small barriers or ledges, fences that the player can jump over that enemy mobs cannot. When you find one of these, the enemy will have to run the long, or I guess what is the shortest path for them to get to you. As with many things in Vanilla WoW, this doesn't always work when you expect it to, or vice versa. Good practice areas include where Princess is in Elwyn Forest, or the ledges around the large building in the ruins of Alterac. It turns dangerous quests such as the one here where you have to defeat 15 elite ogres from something that's really scary and dangerous to not all that bad, provided you are playing a class that can kite them, of course. Either way, if it's a hard quest, look for a place to abuse mob pathing. You can also hit mobs directly through walls. This works because, I don't know really, it just does work. If a mob is positioned close enough to a wall where it's technically inside of your melee range, you will be able to right click it and aggro it. Bonus points if you're playing a Tauren because they have longer than average attack ranges. The enemy will usually hit you back once before pathing out of whatever building it was onto you. This also works attacking units which are above you, below you, anything really. If it's close enough to a wall, you can hit it. Now, this probably isn't always a very good idea, as chances are whenever you hit something, it's going to social aggro a bunch of other mobs on the way out. But if you're playing a class that can handle that situation, it's better than just running into a building and body pulling stuff. Moving on though, everyone loves finding a chest out in the world, and you always feel kind of in a rush to loot it as soon as possible. You don't want that scenario where somebody else rolls up and they take it after you've cleared an area around it. But if you've just barely cleared enough mobs to where you can click it and there are a few left, you probably aren't done yet. When you click on a chest, enemies within line of sight in a small radius will run to defend it. The tip is here to try and line of sight behind something when you click a chest, so not to risk aggroing anything else. You can even still loot chests that are behind solid walls if you're close enough to click them. It works in a similar way to attacking mobs through walls. Next are reset spots. Similar to vendors, they are all over the world and not super obvious to recognize because they're not totally intended as vendors are. A reset spot is a place where the player can get to where mobs have no way to reach them. This will cause them to eventually evade and in time, reset. You typically want to look for tree branches that are hanging down, bits of stone ruins that are elevated in some way, or a place where you can jump from one raised platform onto another. Just knowing these things could help you out maybe in a dungeon run that goes wrong where you need to look for an exit. Either that or remember that leaving a group when inside an instance will force hearthstone you after 1 minute has passed, even if you are in combat. Next up, have you ever been in a questing area where you have to kill X type of mobs and there is quite literally 0 of what you need spawning? This will be due to shared spawns. Shared spawns are an interesting mechanic which, as their name suggests, mean that certain mobs share respawn timers with others. Some notable examples are the Harpies in Stone Talon Mountains in the quest Harpies Threaten. You have to kill a whole bunch of different Harpies here, and someone at Blizzard threw loads of extras on shared respawn timers. The Horde quest Hunt the Savages in the Hinterlands, the Owl Beasts and Stalkers over there will share spawns, and perhaps the most well-known one are the Spiders and Wolves in Western Plaguelands. Everyone has done this quest at some point and wondered why there are 1 or 2 wolves in the entire zone, when in fact there are loads of them. They just share spawns with the spiders. When you come across a quest with shared spawns, all you can do is get to grinding and force spawn the mob type that you need, until somebody else is on the same quest, zooms in and takes the mob you've been forcing to spawn, that is. How do you recognize you're on a shared spawn quest? Here's the fun part, you don't. Nothing in the game tells you that this is happening. You can only assume if the spawn rates are really bad, it might be a shared spawn quest. Next is a tip I have about threat generation. When you think about threat normally, you think tanks using abilities with bonus modifiers such as Sunder or Heroic Strike, people restoring health from potions or healing, and dealing damage. What also causes threat is pretty much everything else as well, just not as noticeably as those previous examples. If you drink a mana potion, that causes threat. If you buff an ally, that causes threat. If you are in combat and you do a thing, that causes threat. Just be aware of this in group scenarios or when playing a pet class. Also, some classes have bonus threat generation on their abilities, which they kind of don't want, such as Priest's Mind Blast, Mage's Counterspell, or Shaman's Earthshock. I guess the lore reasoning is people get mad at you if you attack their mind or something, which is totally different from having a rogue kick you in the face to interrupt a spell that absolutely wouldn't cause bonus threat or anything. Up next is the fact that some of your most class-defining abilities and items are locked behind quests. I really like class quests in vanilla and was kind of sad to see them go in TBC and beyond. I guess the closest we've gotten to them since is a Legion perhaps with the class order halls. That expansion had a ton of class and spec identity. Anyway, sometimes class quests give you a minor reward, such as a green item which is just okay and it can see you through a few levels. Sometimes they give you something which completely changes how you play your character. Druids get Bear Form at level 10 and Aquatic at 16, Paladins get Redemption at level 12, Shamans get Totems from Earth at level 4 to Air at 30, Warlocks will learn most of their demons through quests, and so much more. Class quests are an awesome addition to the game, and whilst not every single one gives you something that's going to completely change the game for you, they're often worth completing sooner rather than later. Now I want to talk about stats and point out in some ways how they are different in vanilla. For example, Spirit is typically seen as a healer stat, but in Classic at low levels it's good for literally every single class in the game due to how health and mana regen works when you're first starting out. Yes, it's even good for rogues and warriors. Many classes scale differently with stats than you would expect too. Shamans gain 2 points of attack power per strength, and agility, at least offensively, only gives them crit. Ferals gain 2 points of attack power per strength too, but when in cap, scale off 1 attack power per point of agility. Rogues also gain 1 attack power per strength, but agility's a better stat as it gives them 1 attack power as well as dodge and crit. Also, agility gives you more stats on top of that, such as 2 armor per point obtained, as well as a small bonus to your dodge chance. Strength, in addition to increasing damage, also increases the amount certain classes can block whilst using a shield shield by a very small amount. Intellect increases spell critical strike chance and mana, and improves the rate at which your character levels their weapon skills. In Classic, you would sometimes see a warrior with arcane intellect and random bind on equipped cloth gear, just going about and leveling up all the different weapons on the immune mobs in the blasted lands. The simplest stat in the game is probably stamina. 1 point equals gain 10 more health, and for hardcore characters is a stat you need to carefully consider. I like to carry 2 rough item sets, one more offensively set up for mob grinding or easier zones. This will have more of my main stat and my beneficial secondary stats. For example, on a hunter, using items that are of the falcon or of the wolf, versus when I'm starting a new zone, doing elite quests or just higher level things in general, I'd re-equip items which have more stamina on again, just for that extra bit of health. Speaking of stats and farming, there are many classes that can benefit heavily from the 5-second rule. This is after not casting spells which cost mana for 5 seconds, you'll begin to regenerate mana every 2 seconds. The amount will depend on your class and the amount of spirit that you have. It's particularly useful on Priest, Warlock and Hunter. Each of these classes can apply a dot or send a pet in, and then gradually wand or auto-shot the target down. And that's about all I have for today. It does feel like whenever you think you know everything about vanilla WoW, there is always something else which you just haven't heard about yet. In any event, hopefully you found something new or useful here, and do drop any more helpful tips down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all on the next one very soon.